Hi, good morning. This is Robert Young. It is, what is today? Thursday the 9th, May, and I want to talk to you a little bit about our investment in the healthcare sector. I'm going to start by really bringing up to speed on a little side thing. I just sent out May's market and investment newsletter. I do want to go just touch base very quickly. Our little biotech company, AVEO, which is been struggling since its January decision not to pursue Federal Drug Administration's new drug application until they received more survivability data. Our little company just keeps plugging along. It's still staying at about, the price point it is, $1, a little under $1. It's had some wonderful news recently. They're giving great presentations. They just beat their earnings report. And in fact, in the May newsletter I just sent out, I made an attachment. About 3 weeks ago, the board decided to issue another $25 million worth of stock into the marketplace. But in fact, as soon as the stock hit the streets, and by the way, the stock on the street was selling at 98 cents a share on that day. When the stock hit the street, they purchased it at $1.14 a share. And what I mean by they is, it's attached to your May newsletter, and you certainly cannot read this, but I highlighted. These are the purchase orders by every single insider and a mutual fund to buy those shares. Now each of them took about $750,000, a little over that actually, out of their own pocket to buy this stock, and that money, that $25 million, went directly onto the balance sheet of AVEO, and it's going to be used in order to continue funding the survivability data research that they're doing. That data should be ready to go in August or September of this year, and that's when the president of AVEO is going to head back over to the offices of the FDA, present some new data, and see if it's time for them to go ahead and do a new drug application. So, hope is not an investment strategy, but I feel like if you were a board member and you were looking at the data as it's coming through, why would you take almost $1 million out of your pocket and buy more shares of stock in something that didn't look like it was going to pass? So let's just keep that in mind and sort of move forward. Now, that being said, let's take that as a segue into the healthcare sector. We've been with the healthcare sector for several years now. It has been doing quite well, and one of the primary reasons is really just simply demographics. So back in the 80s, the same 74 million members of our $330 million community, in other words, all the people living in the United States, 330 million of us, 74 million of them were all scooting around, driving BMWs, being whatever, right? Being dinks, being, I forget what the term was. Anyway, so now what are they driving? They're driving these days, okay? They're all turning 65 and older, and they still want to be this, but now they're this. Or they're driving these, okay? You see that? That's right. Demographics. The numbers tell the story. You can see from this chart back here, this was the healthcare sector that we started investing in. This is important. This is 2016. I'll address that in a minute. But after that, after the election of Trump, now you see it coming up. Now it's dipped down a bit. I'm going to explain all that. Here's why we're in the sector, demographics. And then here's why we're going to stay in the sector and possibly buy more positions if it gets to a price point that I feel comfortable buying. We have made over 26% as our average rate of return for the last 4 years in that sector. This year, a little bit of a struggle. Here's why. On 14 December of last year, a federal judge in Texas ruled that the Affordable Care Act was unconstitutional. Now, that would normally not mean a thing, except that ruling then went to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice on 25 March said, you know what? They changed their initial opinion. For the last few years, they've said it is a constitutional act, and by the way, we're going to stand by it, no big deal, but they reversed that decision on 25 March. And that, quite frankly, sent the entire healthcare sector in turmoil and being sold off because uncertainty. Remember, if an investor does not know what the certainty of an area is going to be, they're a little reluctant to stay invested in it. Even great quality companies like Johnson & Johnson or Merck or Gilead or Pfizer or whomever, big insurance companies, hospital systems, ACA, excuse me, all of those took a bit of a dive. Now, typically, healthcare is a very defensive position. You run to it when you're afraid the market's shaky. Why? Because of these guys running around. But in this case, there's been a bit of a sell-off, and there are really two reasons why. I'm going to go back to this dip right here. This is 2016. This is the year that Hillary Clinton and President Trump were running neck and neck. And what was the overriding theme besides Make America Great Again? It was drug pricing. As soon as there was a question about how drug pricing was going to be handled and possibly taken over and capped by the federal government, prices dropped in the healthcare industry, right? As soon as he was elected, what happened? Climbs back up. What is happening now? Why the dip? Very simply this. There is uncertainty as a result of the federal ruling and the Department of Justice coming back and saying, we stand by it. Because the next step for this is to go before the Supreme Court, and they will vote to determine if the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional and should be repealed. Now, I have no clue if that's going to occur, but look now at the number of federal judge or Supreme Court justices that have been placed on the bench by Trump, who are very conservative and would more than likely find something like this unconstitutional. That will put an unwinding on the Affordable Care Act. That will cause some disruption in the healthcare sector. Prices will fall a bit in terms of the value of the stocks that are in it. And we may pounce on that and take advantage of it. Why? Because after that, good Lord, do you really think that our baby boomers and our millennials, etc., Gen Xers, they're getting any younger, and they are, yeah, certainly people are getting healthy, they're living longer lifespans, and that actually will play in more for the reason why we're going to be in the healthcare sector. I'm going to have to read some of this off because frankly, there's just a lot for me to get out to you. Here is why there's also an additional bit of uncertainty, and it kind of goes back to 2016. You've got an entire league of Democratic presidential nominees, all sort of spearheaded by Bernie Sanders, all yelling for Medicare for all. Well, let me tell you something. That is not going to happen. And I'm going to tell you why it's not going to happen in 2 seconds. Not because Bernie's not going to be elected. It's not going to happen financially. So back just a few months ago, and actually a couple of years ago, the General Accounting Office, the GAO, have been following, they run their analysis of the funding for Medicare as it currently stands. And what they have determined is that the trust will be insolvent without the addition of any more people added to it. The trust will be insolvent by 2024. That is 5 years from now. Meaning, and they do not believe that there is enough taxes that will be brought in to cover the deficit. So what's going to have to happen? Sure, Medicare for all, it'll bankrupt the system sooner, and our taxes will have to skyrocket to cover that. Here we go. This is our current valuation for the healthcare sector is the lowest that it's been since 2016. It is cheap, but you know me, I'm cheaper, so I want to get it for less. The political angle of Medicare for all, yes, Bernie Sanders is out there spearheading it, but really he does not have the lead. Joe Biden has the lead in every poll except for the New Hampshire primary, and that's only because Bernie Sanders has the home court advantage there. All 20 Democratic candidates support the Medicare for All, expanded Medicare, but you can be for something and then have trouble enacting it. You can stand for it, you can say I'm for it, I'm going to make this happen, but as soon as you get into office, there can be challenges to actually getting that done. And I'll just use our President, Commander-in-Chief in point. The wall, right? We're going to build that wall, and yet, where's that wall? So, also, we have to look at this. In a recent poll by the Kaiser family, they surveyed Americans and said, hey, do you think health insurance is a right for all Americans? And 70% of the people said yes. However, when they then asked them, what if this means you have to eliminate your private health insurance, you are going to require to pay more taxes, and the current Medicare program, the way it's set up, will have to be adjusted, meaning threatened, and also lead to delays in the treatment of tests, less than 50% of the people responding were for it. So once the reality of a Medicare for All plan is presented, then you don't get the support out there that you do as a concept. Finally, Medical Student Association did their own analysis and realized that the individuals over the age of 65 will increase by 73% between 2010, where it's already passed, to 2030. We are going to have a massive amount of elderly people in our system. The healthcare spending in the U.S., which last year was $3.6 trillion, is expected to go to $6 trillion by 2027. All right, let's take a step back here. If I had a business where over the next 10 years, the number of individuals needing my service will rise by 70%. I had to write this down so I could get this down. And I expected the total spending by those people to double. Would I want to own that business? The answer is yes. And if your answer is yes, healthcare. That's why we're in it. That is why we're going to stay in it. That is why we're going to buy more. It's going to increase in value because it's going to be a necessity. The people utilizing it will increase by 70%. And the price they're going to have to pay is double. And that's going to be revenue and profits. Thank you very much. It's a little bit longer video than normal, but I wanted to address AVEO and keep you going on that, as well as addressing the healthcare sector. Any questions or concerns, as always, please reach out anytime. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day.